Lyubomir Tankishev, Business Development Director, Evrotrust. Sorry if I misspelled it, but please join us and let's see another presentation, I guess, about KYC and anti-money laundering. So,
thank you. So I'd really want to start with thanking Anke and Elena and Sebastian for the last panel, because they made my job so much easier. The very first section of the presentation that I wanted to do is exactly on UX. The topic that we're going to talk today about is changes and what are some new trends and some new opportunities when it comes to customer identification in banking, but not only in banking, in financial services, in telecommunication, in utilities, in healthcare as well. Why does it matter? Why does it matter to look deep into what we have today as technology, looking deep as to what we have today as processes? It matters because what we've been seeing in the last 3 years is, on an annual basis, an average of 23% increase in digital users. These are people that have been using services either physically or semi-digitally, but are migrating towards full digital usage. I don't know about you, but let's do a bit of a show of hands. Let's take banking. How many of you have been in a branch, in a bank, the last time, in the last month? Nobody. The last 6 months? The last 1 year? Okay, let's do that. Let's make it 3 years. Okay. Personally, the last time I was in a bank branch was 12 years ago. I have been focused in all my interactions with the bank to stay away from the bank branches. I mean, everything I do, I would go through tremendous things, and I'm going to share with you. I'm trying to stay away from bank branches. I'm trying to do all my banking digitally, remotely, any way possible, but not to go there. So I'm one of those 23% that you have there, but started much more than 3 years ago. There is a growing demand in terms of identity proofing in e-signing solutions. On an annual basis, for the same last 3 years, we've been seeing 89% increase in demand for such services. Why? Because people are moving digital. However, this demand is not meeting customer expectations today. Our research is showing that if you take traditional banks and user satisfaction surveys, you would see that consumer satisfaction shows that 72% of the users are not meeting the user experience that they expect in a digital journey with the bank. Why? Well, a lot of it goes with bad onboarding. About 42% of individuals abandon digital onboarding processes, either because it's a bad user experience, or because it takes too long, or maybe it takes more than one attempt to do so, or maybe it asks them to do that via some sort of video interview or some lengthy process, or maybe it just happens in the time of the day that doesn't work for them. A lot of the processes for onboarding individuals are actually pseudo-digital, put it like that. So they're not fully digital. You may start a digital process, but then if you want to transact with the bank, if you want to use the actual service, you would need to visit the bank branch, or you would need to do some extra steps outside of the traditional digital process. Why I'm talking about pseudo-digital? Because it's very important to know that consumers are demanding full digital UX. And when we're talking about fully digital, it's important to split between digital initialized, and all of us here in this room are experts in digital initialized consumer onboarding, right? I don't think that I've seen any bank that is present today here that has not done any steps in terms of digital onboarding. This is the first touch with a bank, be it by some online service on a web page, click on a banner, landing on some product page, downloading a bank app. However, not many of us are actually have proficient processes into digitally finished processes, which is the last interaction you have with a bank. So if I'm taking a loan, if I'm a new to bank customer and I want to take a loan, I'd like to be able to be onboarded remotely. I'd like to be able to be scored remotely. I'd like to be able to get my proposal fully remotely. I'd like to sign fully remotely. I don't want to visit the bank branch, as I mentioned. I'd like to have end-to-end digital without talking to a call center, without getting some support from somebody. So not a assisted digital process. I'd like to have fully digital process. This puts a lot of pressure when it comes to notification of individuals and onboarding on the current solutions that we have today. To an extent that we could say there is a paradigm shift. Okay, so today users are interested into reusable identity solutions. They're interested, if I'm going to be becoming a client of a bank, I'd like to be able to do this onboarding identification only one time. And I'd like my identity to be reused multiple times. Every time the bank wants to interact with me, I don't want to be re-identified again. If I do the same for an insurance company, I don't like every time I'm signing an insurance policy or renewing an insurance policy to have my identity rechecked, or at least not to go through the same process that I've gone at the beginning, right? To do that, the providers of identity solutions and e-sign solutions need to start thinking end-to-end digital. Need to provide solutions that allow more than just digital onboarding, to enable more than just digital onboarding, right? And these solutions need to be the same way compliant. Consumers see consistency in user experience. It's very important what was discussed in the panel before. I liked it a lot. A user likes to have a consistent user experience throughout their multiple interactions with the bank, right? I'll give you an example I mentioned at the beginning. The bank that I transact with, the one that I have not visited a bank branch since 12 years, and I've been fighting every step of the way. Just about 2 months ago, I lost my identity card. Okay, so I reissued a new one. I did that fully remotely, digitally. And then I just wanted to share my new identity with the bank. Why? Because I couldn't do a transfer, having in mind that the bank automatically read in the register that my document has been lost or stolen. So, unfortunately, there is no way in that bank to actually update your identity digitally. So they onboarded me digitally. If I'm a new to bank, I can download their app and fully register without ever visiting to a branch. Okay. I can do that 24/7. So any time of the night, I could actually become a client of the bank. But if I lose my ID card, I need to go to the branch. That's the requirement of the bank that I transact with. So I had to go through a very lengthy process of discussion and arguing with them, and quite uncomfortable for me process of scanning my document and emailing it to some customer support email address where I have no idea who had access to this personal data and read this personal data, but I did it because I didn't want to go to the branch, right? So consistency in UX is very important. Quite often we see in our banking clients that they have very siloed approaches when it comes to digitalization. It is normal because they're solving problems one problem at a time. But they may have some process for digital onboarding. They may have some process for, say, account management, for payments, for transfers. But then when it comes to mortgage loans, for example, they would send me my contract to sign it with a courier, okay, if it's digital. So consistency across the whole spectrum of services is very important. Another thing which was mentioned in the panel before and I liked a lot is that users have cross-service expectations. We're talking about user-centric world, right? Each one of us is influenced by our experience with other solutions and other services, right? I mean, I'd like my banking to be the same as my experience of using Netflix, okay? I like it to be very easy, just swipe. I like it to guess what I need next. I don't want them to call and offer products that I don't need. This transfer of experience from one service to another is something that we need to be aware of okay? And when we're designing our user experience, we need to have this in mind. I'd like, when it comes to banking, I'd like to have a very streamlined UX process for opening. I like it to be automated. I like to be 24/7. I mean, I don't want to do video interviews. I like to do it at any point of the day, right? I'd like to do it cross-border. I'd like to be able to transact, maybe to apply it for a loan while I'm in Greece on the beach. Okay? I'd like to do that. Why? Because with other services, it is possible to do. Why shouldn't I be able to do that with the bank? I'd like to be able to sign remotely with one click. I don't want to have a flash drive that I plug into my computer to do so. Okay, I just want in my banking app to have my solution and sign it there. I like all my data to be securely protected and for me to be managing that data. Why? Because I can do that in Facebook. So I have the same expectation. And I'd like to have really an omni-channel experience. I'd like to be able to achieve all of that irrespective of whether I start my process on the web, I finish my process on the mobile. I'd like to have the same experience. And then comes these guys, okay? I mean, these requests are not just my requests. Every product manager knows these requests. However, then there is this very fine lady here who's saying no. And when it comes to who is the ultimate decision maker, right? In the bank, at the end of the day, yes, it may be a committee that decides how a product or a UX should exist, but ultimately, if there is a no from compliance on that committee, you have a no-go, right? So what's the way forward going from here? I mean, rolling back to talking about identity, right, and identification. There is a very interesting option that exists today, which came with the ADAS regulation in Europe. How many of you actually know about ADAS? Yes, of course. Okay. So the European Union has a regulation that has been put in place, this regulation 910 ADAS, which actually has been just revised. We expect to have the new one, ADAS 2.0, in December, which sets a framework for several very important things, like remote identity, so national EID schemes, notified national EID schemes, trust services, how they're provided across the European Union, cross-border compliance and transfer of services. And when it comes to EID, actually it creates something which is very interesting. It's a requirement for each country in the EU to have in place, which is that each EU member state should notify at least one EID scheme that should be audited, reviewed by the cooperation network of the European Union. And this EID scheme should allow the nationals from that country, so the citizens of that nationality, to be able to identify themselves with this EID scheme across border with all EU member states, right? So yes, we're supposed to have those. Many countries still don't. Romania is one of those, right? That do not have the national EID scheme in place. Most markets already have these schemes in place. These schemes are typically local for the nationals of that respective market. Most of these schemes require some sort of initial physical contact, but then allow for fully remote identifying and reusable identity. These schemes allow for regulatory compliance. The 50 ml directive, which is fundamental and has been transcribed into local AML directives when it comes to KYC, and both for KYC and KYB, actually stipulates that one of the ways that you can do your KYC for AML purposes is by using of a notified EID scheme. It allows for local TSPs, trust service providers, to issue, relying on these schemes, EID schemes, to issue remotely qualified certificates. So allows you to ease into your process today the signing of any documents, to embed into your current business process, into your UX, qualified signing at any point of the process. It allows for cross-border transactions, and it allows for a much enhanced security. Now, we were talking about ADAS compliant solution as an alternative to the traditional video identification technology solution that you have today. The current solution that you have is based on technology. The current solutions are based on some technology that locally a regulator, and in Romania that's the ADR, that have to go through the process, they have to certify the technology piece, and you could use it in that respective market, in that respective way to identify individuals for the purposes of AML KYC. The ADAS solution, the notified TID schemes as per the ADAS, are based on a trust service. They're based on a solution that, once approved on the EU level, provides cross-border acceptability for all public services on the markets, and with the upcoming ADAS 2.0, actually it's going to become mandatory acceptable for all private services of public interests, which means that with ADAS 2.0, the acceptance of a ADAS notified scheme is going to become mandatory for all banking, utilities, healthcare, education service providers on the markets. The locally compliant solutions usually require some sort of identification technology, but they leave the liability for the wrongful identification with the bank, with the relying party. So today, if you're using some technology solution to onboard clients, this is considered third-party reliance, and this solution leaves the liability for wrongful identification with you, with the bank. If you're relying on a ADAS notified TID scheme for your identification and KYC process, then the liability for wrongful identification rests with the EID scheme. Right? So this would be, typically these schemes are government managed, so this would be with the government, right, that has created the scheme and has notified the scheme. These schemes can, with traditional solutions, quite often you're required to re-identify yourself, so they cannot be reused. With the EID scheme, once you're part of the EID scheme, you could reuse it multiple times. Now, how these schemes help to enable end-to-end digital? Well, they provide identity attestation, so as I mentioned, reusable identity. They provide, they shift the burden of liability for wrongful identification. They're automatically AML KYC compliant. They allow for qualified e-signing, so TSP providers can rely on those schemes to remotely issue qualified certificates, which allow users to sign instantly in bank apps on your smartphone with one click. They are ADAS certified. They allow to have other qualified services like qualified e-delivery. So if we're talking end-to-end process today, we should not only be thinking about onboarding a client, we should be thinking all the way of the customer lifecycle, which means that you could have solutions like qualified e-delivery embedded, white-labeled into your current UX to allow your clients to receive any secure communication. You could be sending your pins for the credit cards, for a new issued credit card, onto the app today, and in a secure way. You can be generating proofs of delivery for any message. So maybe the user has been delayed on a loan, okay, and you'd like to have a legal way of proving that you communicated to this individual that he's delayed on his mortgage and that some penalties are starting to trigger. You can do that with qualified e-delivery enabled with an ADAS compliant EID scheme. And last but not least, this is our favorite TBA guidelines, which we got November last year. And by the end of 2023, so this year, they become effective. According to the EBA guidelines, you can be relying on ADAS EID, ADAS notified EID scheme for your identity verification, and this would automatically mean that your requirements for identifying this user and all the criteria that are listed in the EBA guidelines have been automatically met if you're relying on such kind of scheme. So why I have been talking so much about this alternative way of identification? because of Evrotrust EAD scheme. Evrotrust is a company that in the last couple of years has managed to create, certify, and launch and operate the first private pan-European ADAS compliant notified EAD scheme. So in 5th of June this year, we had our ADAS compliant scheme listed into the official journal of the European Commission after 2 years of extensive audits by all EU member states. As I mentioned before, once you notify the EAD scheme, this scheme becomes mandatory for all public sector in all EU markets. So we had to be audited by all of the EU member states and unanimously approved. So we've created and we operate a national EAD scheme with a twist. What's the twist? Our scheme can onboard any individual from any nationality, so it's not Bulgarian only. Unlike the other nationally operated schemes, like It's Me in Belgium, for example, which works only for Belgians, the Evrotrust scheme can be used to onboard citizens of any nationality. Our scheme supports level of assurance high and substantial, which are the stipulated level of assurance for financial sector requirements. The scheme is automatic. It allows for 24/7 onboarding of individuals. It allows for automated issuance of qualified certificates of any onboarded or any registered individual into the scheme. So you could have an end-to-end customer journey where your clients can onboard using the scheme, and at the very next step they could be signing. And last but not least, the scheme can be white labeled. What makes it unique, we are the only private EAD scheme certified by the European Union, and this scheme can be white labeled. It can be embedded into any of your existing banking solutions that you have today. You can embed it as a SDK into your mobile app of the bank. You can embed it into your web processes. And you could have a seamless experience from all your clients when starting from onboarding to any interaction going down the road. Now, in mindful of time, I'm going to skip some of the slides ahead. Just wanted to share a bit. This scheme has already been operating for some time now. We have about 1.2 million registered users from 62 different nationalities. We are working with 15 banks already. With some of the largest banks in Europe. And maybe just one thing that I wanted to share with you. As an end of this presentation, please have in mind, consumers are always in search for a better solution. So when you're thinking about your current UX, at any point of time, have in mind, consumers are thinking about a next step. They're comparing it to another one. They're looking for a better one. And if you're just as an attestation of what we do, these are two of our largest clients, KBC Group and UniCredit. These two banks, by using the Evrotrust EAD schemes and solutions, managed to become the top digitalized banks within their respective groups. So, thank you very much for your time. As a present for all you guys, I have a QR code here, if you can scan, then you'll be able to download the EBA guidelines with a bit of information how a notified EAD scheme can help you meet all the requirements which are there.
Thank you, Bo. Let's see if there are questions. Maybe one question, because I'm very sure that we are all hungry and thirsty.
Hi, great presentation. Two clarifications and one question. Romania has already an EID schema under the government. It's just not notified yet. It's in the process of being notified, and Romania has rules and regulations for remote customer identification under ADR, as you mentioned earlier. So these are the two clarifications. And the question is, you mentioned the EID schema offered by Evrotrust, which is indeed certified as a national EID schema notified to the European Commission. You said it has level of assurance substantial. In eIDAS 2.0, there might be requirement for level of assurance high. Is there any plan to make it level of assurance high?
Okay, so if you open the official journal of the EU, you would see that the schema is listed with level of assurance high and substantial. So it already covers level of assurance high. We are aware of the ADR requirements. The ADR requirements for video identification, which are already in place, they deal with what is the third, I would say, option, which is when you have a local schema, which is not notified on a market. Many markets have those requirements. When you're not making a reliance on a notified scheme, each market where we operate, we have, of course, there's always some solution that has been put and managed by a local regulator and requires certification from that local regulator. In Romania, that's the ADR. The requirements for video onboarding that exist in Romania. The ADR does not govern schemas which are notified at the EU level. So it provides certification for locally used solutions, which does not automatically mean that you can use them cross-border, right? It does not automatically mean that you can use these solutions with individuals from different nationalities. So we have been already, we're quite in good contact with the ADR. We've presented our schema with them. The ADR is aware. They have confirmed that they do not govern the solution, so we don't need to certify, so to recertify what's already been approved on the EU level. Of course, which is quite normal, they have requested that whenever an institution in the market in Romania wants to rely on the Evrotrust schema, they would have to notify the ADR.